All right, so good morning. My name is Macy Hanrahan. This is the results of my action research study that I did on the flipped classroom. The purpose of my study was to look at the limited time that we have in AP classes. We have lots of information to cover in a very short amount of time, and every year it seems that that amount of time just gets shorter and shorter, and we're always finding ourselves behind in these classes. It's also the complexity of the class. It's not just the breadth, but it's also the depth. We're having to cover from the Indians coming over on the Bering Strait all the way over to Barack Obama's inauguration. So because there's so much to go over as far as the time, plus the depth of it, we always end up running out of time on these classes. And then also the critical thinking practice that is required for them to perform well in an AP exam, especially on the essay portions. There's a lot of critical thinking that is involved, and unfortunately, because of the amount of content we have to go over, there's not enough time for critical thinking practice in class. So I decided that I was going to be using the flipped classroom as part of my research study. And my two questions, the first one was, what effect will the flipped classroom have on students' understanding of the big ideas in history? Basically looking at their understanding of overall themes, overall concepts within history. And then also, what impact will the flipped classroom have on students' critical thinking skills? And I was hoping to see if there would be an improvement because they would have more time in class to practice these with teacher guidance. So we had to do some research ahead of time to kind of figure out what the flipped classroom was. And so with my research, the history of it actually started off in Colorado with two chemistry teachers, Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams in 2006. And they started off by creating screencasts of their lectures that they put online for students that they had that were absent. But because it was online, a lot of their students just happened to find it, started spreading it around to other kids in the class, and eventually they realized that all of their students ended up using these screencasts, and so that's kind of where the flipped classroom was born. And they decided that they were going to take that idea and totally flip their classroom the next year, where all of the lectures would be done by an online video lecture, and then students would practice concepts in the classroom with the teacher. So the definition of what is a flipped classroom, what it is that it reverses the work, the classwork and the homework paradigms. So basically everything that used to be done in class, such as lecture, taking notes, and that type of thing, is going to be done at home. It's content knowledge. And then all of the higher level thinking is going to be done in the classroom with the guidance of the teacher. Plus, it also flips the student-teacher roles in that the students in the classroom are leading a lot of their own content knowledge. They're actually going to be taking on more of an independent role, and the teacher is going to go from the sage on the stage, like I am right now, to more as the guide on the side. What it isn't is it does not replace teachers with online videos. It is not students staring at a computer screen all day, and it is also not an online course. And there are some people that do make this confusion, but the idea behind the flipped classroom is that you're using technology to improve the amount of time that you spend in class rather than using it as a replacement for teachers' expertise. Who is flipping most commonly? It is found in middle and high schools. It is found mostly in math and science classes, and it's usually with teachers that have at least 7 years experience. Generally, this is because when you have a flipped classroom, you have your entire class period where the students are working more or less independently. And teachers with more experience are able to troubleshoot issues a lot better, as well as these teachers are able to deal with filling in gaps in content much better than newer teachers usually. Some other information about this, the benefits of the flipped classroom based on research is that for teachers, it allows more time for differentiation. We have such diverse classes that it's sometimes hard to get to everybody. And so the flipped classroom allows you to go to each group, to each student, talk with them individually, and find out exactly what they're missing and what they're not getting. It also allows for more opportunities to work with students one-on-one, to, like I said, find out what they're getting and what they're not. And also you spend less time reteaching because students can review the content on their own time by reviewing the videos. This allows you more time in class to work on more higher levels of critical thinking. For students, the benefits, students can require content at their own pace. You always have those kids that are struggling to keep up. The kids that are always raising their hand asking you to keep the slide up just one more minute so that they can finish taking the notes. These kids can watch the videos on their own time, at their own pace, pause it as many times as they need so that they can actually get the content. This also allows them more face time with their teacher, which generally does also give them a deeper appreciation for the class, and it makes them feel more connected to the class and to the content. The critique of the flipped classroom, a lot of people that feel that this is maybe just like putting lipstick on a pig. It's, you know, you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And that it does not make a bad teacher a good teacher. It does not turn a poor lesson into a great one. Negative impacts for teachers for this, it is a lot of time. It is much more time in preparation, and also those that may not be as technologically savvy, it takes some practice to get used to those things. For students, not all students are going to have an increased level of engagement. Those that like to have that straightforward lecture, like to have that direct instruction, may have some difficulty with this style, as well as some students may feel lost without their teacher being right there to answer their questions immediately, and they may not necessarily be as apt to work well independently or be self-starters. So what happens with mine? When I started my research, the setting is here at Eleanor Roosevelt High School here in Eastvale, California. It was for 2 periods of my AP US History class. I had 73 students, 33 of which were male, 40 of which were female. It's a very racially diverse class, as our campus tends to be very racially diverse. And I also have 22% of them that are redesignated fluent from the CELT test. So there is some level of, although they are redesignated fluent, there is still going to be some language issues, especially with academic language, that we struggle with. And then 28% of them are GATE and 8% of them are AVID, which lets me know that aside from this being an AP class, a lot of these students are interested in critical thinking as well as interested in going into college after school. So what we did in our classroom for this intervention was, it was a 4-week unit on progressivism and imperialism, which is a little bit longer than normally what I would have had. What the kids did at home is that they had a lecture video that was a little less than 15 minutes, and then I would have a focus video that went along with it that was a little under 10 minutes. These focus videos were usually on a topic that I felt needed deeper instruction, needed a little bit more fleshing out than what I could cover in just the short videos. I used a screencast software, and I basically just recorded my own voice and my own mini lecture onto the screen, threw it up on YouTube, and the kids were able to access it through my class website. Students were asked to take notes and then also to write down any questions that they had when they were watching the video, so that the next day when we came into class, those questions could be answered and we can clarify any misconceptions. So when we came into class, what we were doing is students posted questions about the lecture on a polling website called pollingeverywhere.com, and there's actually an example of what the kids posted. So on here, the kids would text in their questions that they had, and then we would go through and we would answer them together as a class. Sometimes I would be asking other students to help respond to see who was able to actually help out their other classmates. And then sometimes if it was something that needed to bring multiple subjects together or multiple ideas together, I would go ahead and continue on that mini lecture. The in-class activities centered on analyzing primary source documents, and every class had primary source documents that were included. So the one on the left, you see one that is an article from the New York Times on the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. The one on the right-hand side was an analysis of several documents from the Spanish-American War. We also had a variety of other activities that were comparing various ideas to come to a conclusion on one single theme. We also had analysis of cause and effect of different events so that we could practice some of the skills of critical thinking that students need for the exam, but also especially so that they can get used to working with documents, because that's a major part of the essay portion of the AP exam. For the data collection, I had student-generated artifacts such as their classwork, their homework questions, or their normal homework questions that we tried to do as much as we could in class, which are essential questions. They're generally big ideas, critical thinking, and also I used their test scores based off of our Illuminate education site. I used observational data. I walked around the room, I talked with students, I took notes about how students were doing and what they were understanding and maybe not understanding. And then also some inquiry data. Before they took the before we started the flipped classroom, they took a survey, and then they took a very similar survey after we were done with the intervention, so that students could see a similarity or a difference between how they performed before and how they performed after the intervention. And this was also very helpful in triangulating my data for this study. So my findings for the big ideas is that students felt more prepared with their multiple choice, which is the content information, for the AP exam. Exam scores did improve slightly overall, but it improved the best for those students that consistently performed very low on exams. Their scores went up on average 9 points, which is pretty good for one of these tests. Also, students who had reviewed most or all of the videos based off of their survey before they took the test earned at least a 70% or above, which is considered passing for the AP exam. 30% of them felt that they had a better understanding of the content after the flipped class, and 27% that they liked being able to review the lectures before the test and to be able to review them as they needed. As for critical thinking skills, students felt more prepared for the multiple choice section, or multiple choice and for the essay section. And the essay section is really where you see the critical thinking skills come in, because they have to take their knowledge and put it down into words rather than just selecting the right bubble. For this, these students felt that that after the flipped classroom that they were more prepared. They went from feeling not very prepared to at least somewhat prepared, which at this point in the year was okay. I feel all right with them feeling at least somewhat prepared. I observed students asking greater critical thinking questions as we progressed through the classes and through the units. They also were asking better questions during class and during an activity. However, we also were seeing that students were much more independent as they were working, and that they weren't asking me for direction, they were actually asking their group mates, and they were working out ideas together, which is something that they had not really done very much before. They were just relying on me to answer their question directly. And finally, the answers to their essential questions increased in their depth, in their clarity, as well as in their detail as the unit progressed, as we continued the flipped classroom. So the conclusions that I came to from this activity and from this intervention, it is time consuming, and so it's something that maybe you don't want to jump in full force immediately, but it's definitely something that can be helpful. So I would recommend implementing it slowly, picking maybe 1 or 2 lessons a unit to try and flip, especially those that you feel that you really want to get deeper into the content with, rather than those that you just have a lot of information. Those that have a lot of information can be difficult to try and flip. Also, it improves student understanding. Students really understood the material a lot better than they had in the past, and I felt that they appreciated the information a lot more because they got to deal with it in a deeper sense. And finally, it improves students' critical thinking skills. That was evident in both their test scores as well as their surveys and in their classwork and homework. I was finding that these students' critical thinking skills was improving. So with all of those things, and my plans for the future with this is that I would like to continue it with my class, not fully flipping my AP class because it's still difficult with the amount of content to be able to keep up on pace by flipping every lesson, but especially those lessons that are either too short to dedicate an entire class period to. It's a nice way to just get a lot of information out in a very quick way. And I also liked the idea that if you don't have a lot of information out, but you do want to go deeper into one particular topic, it does allow you that time to do so. And so I'm going to do this, continuing on for the rest of the school year and definitely adding more into it for my next school year. So with that, I thank you guys very much. And if you guys want to look at my resources, there we go. So thank you.